Hey guys, Paul McLean here. Welcome to the Monday Morning Wake Up Podcast Classroom Edition. And today, guys, I've got something to really cover with you. I believe is going to make a massive difference. In fact, the last, a week or two ago, I stepped in. We did this lock-in, and a lot of you guys have heard of these lock-ins that are taking place. And I thought, man, I want to be a part of this. I want to join some of these top producers, these producers that are just getting started. And I want to dial alongside them. I want to work alongside them. And so, all reality, it's been several years since I stepped in and bought leads, called families, booked appointments, talked to clients, and did that whole deal, right? And so I was excited to step in and go through the process. And really what I want to do today is I'm going to unpack that, what that process looked like. I'm also going to unpack what I observed in this lock-in and really kind of it seemed like every agent fit within these three different categories of an agent, right? As far as mindset, behavior, attitude. And so I'm going to unpack those three different, groups. And I believe that what you'll be able to do is kind of sit there and say, okay, which one do I fit in? Right. And I'm going to go through like 7 or 8 different concepts and see, hey, do I fit into the group 1 with that concept or the group 3 on this other concept? And I believe this is going to really serve you well as far as heightening awareness and really kind of unpacking the commonalities of the top producers and be able to get yourself more in line with those that have crossed the path at the rate that you want to cross it. And so to me, when I got started day one of the things that I focused on was finding people that had massive success and just finding commonalities, right? And today we're going to talk about that. What are the commonalities of the top producers? Now, just to kind of give you my path to the lock-in and me preparing and getting all ready, it was to me, it was exciting to see how simple this process was. I'm not going to act like I walked uphill both ways in the snow, but it's just a different ball game. When I got going back in 2013, we didn't have a CRM. Right? We didn't have a lead vendor. We had a mail house that would drop mail. We had to pay for the mail. And then as the mail came back in 4 weeks later, we were able to identify, did we drop enough? Did we not drop enough? What were we paying for the lead? Did we get 10 back? We were paying $50 a lead. Did we get 5 back? We're paying $100 a lead. Like, it was just a different ball game. In fact, true story, it's kind of funny now in hindsight. In the moment, it was definitely not funny. But the mail house that we partnered with burned down like 4 weeks into launching FFL. So we're like, dude, where are the leads at? And like, well, the mail house burned down. Well, that's cute. The dog ate my kid's homework last night too. Like, where are my leads at, dog? Like, give me my leads. And in fact, the mail house had burned down. So, I mean, it was a different ball game. But to step in and to see ILC and how everything was set up, to me, I was, refreshed and really assured in the fact that, man, we've got the best possible shot for somebody to take and make when joining the insurance industry. And so I hopped on ILC and I went through and I picked up some leads. I got a diverse amount of leads. I got some Ethos Banded leads. I got some instant internet life leads. I got some direct mail like mortgage leads that were like, I guess they're 6 months year old. I got some old final expense leads that had a work spot discount. So I got a big discount on those, which I was excited about. I was able to get more leads for what I was putting in. And I printed all these leads off. So I was all ready to go, right? And this is the day before the lock-in. And so I had them all ready. So come lock in, I was there, by the way, first one there, right? I remember that, hey, I always want to have an advantage. I always want to have the edge. And that's the thing I also could tell you is the people that did the best, they were there first. Not there first by a mile, but they started dialing and they were working at 7:30 a.m. There were some that got there at 8 o'clock, 8:30, and you can say, well, it's just 1 hour, dude. Like, what's an hour? Well, I'm telling you, 7:30 to 8:30, what I saw, that was magic hour. It's like we go to Disneyland, once a year and around the Christmas time, and the kids, and they love walking around. It's like, it's magical, right? To me, I've never really got it because I hate lines. And so I've never been a fan until I found out you could do these VIP service, which made it a lot better. But before the VIP service, what I realized is you got to take advantage of magic hour. It's the first hour before everybody else can access the park, right? If you're staying at the Disneyland Hotel, or I think it's, what is it called? Hill, like the California Hotel or something like that. Anyway, but you stay there, you get an hour entry into the park early, and you get to see and do so much more in the same hour. So everybody else can say, man, I went for 8 hours. You went for the same 8 hours, but I got way more done. I went on way more things because I got there in an hour where most people weren't there. And I can tell you this much, that hour from 7:30 to 8:30, what I witnessed, that was the hour where more appointments were booked in that hour by far than any other hour throughout the entire day. And I'm talking from 7 a.m. all the way to 9 p.m. It wasn't even close. And see, to me, that reminded me of one of the concepts that I realized early on in this business is, man, I want to do everything I can to get the advantage and the edge, meaning that I might not be the most skilled, I might not be the most talented, but if I can get the advantage, if I can have the edge, if I can build the deserve more, like, man, I deserve more because I was here when nobody else was here. I deserve more. Then it kind of gave me some confidence to borrow from that. So I was more inclined to respond in a better way, a more charismatic way, a more caring way, a more way that, hey, I'm in control. I'm the doctor, you're the patient, because I'm the person that deserves to book an appointment. I'm the person that's here sooner, right? I always looked at it like, if I was in a foot race against, who's that super fast guy? Usain Bolt. He was quick. If I'm racing him in a 100-yard dash, like, I'm not confident at all. I'm like, I'm definitely going to lose. He's an Olympic gold medal. But if you're like, dude, you get to start on the 90-yard line. So I got to run 10 yards. He's got to run 100. I mean, dude, like, I'm cocky now. I'm like, I'm confident. I might run backwards and like make fun of him as I beat him because, like, dude, I got an advantage. And so the edge was important. So I get there 7, I'm ready to go. 7 a.m. I'm all prepared. 7:30, make the first phone call. And what I realized is this, like, the things that were true then, man, they're just as true now. Like, success leaves clues, and these concepts, like, they're like unmovable. They're not changeable. Like, they are what they are as far as being able to deal with people, connect with people. And I realized that even after a couple of years that clients had not come up with any new objections. Like, while we were getting better with our systems, our standards, our training, our programs, they weren't in the other room being like, all right, man, let's get these agents today. We're going to come up with a creative objection to really rattle them and mess with them. No, it was exact same objections then as it was now, right? And so I ended up getting on the phones. I called all these different lead types, which I was excited because my whole goal was I want to be of value to people. I want to be able to really help people. And the best way I could help some people is to remove some excuses, to remove some lies. Like the agent that says, man, this lead type, dude, they're not, these leads ain't any good. Or this lead, because those leads aren't here and those are no longer available, and they were not in the CRM, I had to get these ones, and these ones don't work out the same. And so I wanted to be the person that can help say, hey, I hear you. The only thing I can say to that, though, is I got a variety of different leads, and I booked appointments off every one of them. And so I sat there, and in the 1 hour, I booked 8 appointments, and they were from every different lead type. There was a couple from Ethos, abandoned leads, which I love those. My booking ratio was the highest on those out of any other lead type. Mortgage protection, final expense. I had appointments booked from all different lead types. And so what I realized is it reinforced the fact that what we say is true, that a lead is a lead. It's not a lead. It's a family that's made an inquiry. It's a family that one or two things are taking place for that family. One, they have life insurance. And if they do, meeting with you could probably give them a better plan. In my mind, if they have life insurance, I'm almost more excited to talk to that individual because I know that if I can show them more value than what they're already paying, it's easy to get them to reposition it from here to over here. It's a no-brainer. There's no new expense, no new cost. It's just a simple repositioning. If this has high value, it's a no-brainer. And so if they have life insurance, I'm like, dude, I want to talk to them because I can do a review and get them a better plan. And if they don't have life insurance, then they desperately need it because one day something's going to happen. They're going to be driving down the freeway. Somebody that just got their license is driving down the freeway. They're texting and driving. They're not paying attention. They're going to hit them. And maybe that's the last day. Maybe the next knock on the door is not them, or the next entry in the door is not them. It's the officer that's holding that driver's license that says, is this your husband? Oh, yes, it is. Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith. He's not coming home tonight. And see, that's going to happen, whether that's a car accident, whether it's a heart attack, whether that's him not waking up, but that's going to happen. So the best producers, they're aware of that. They're thinking about that. They're mindful of that. And as they call every single lead, they're not thinking like, this is an internet lead. Oh, this is a mortgage protection lead. They're thinking, no, man, this is a family. And almost visualizing. And the cool thing was I kind of fell into these patterns and the routines that I developed for over 10 years being in the top 10 producers for 10 straight years, I had these patterns that were just ingrained. And there are patterns that I didn't have day one, but I picked them up by watching top producers, and I started to emulate. Okay, I got it. They get there early. Okay, got it. They call the same leads 3 times back to back. Okay, got it. They have $1,500 investing leads. Okay, got it. And I started to pick those up. Okay, they visualize. They have a different approach on the lead when they call it, and it's because they see it as a family, and they go through this mental rehearsal of the client dying, what it's going to take place, and what does it look like. So when they call, it's easier for them to take the eyes off themselves, the need they have for a paycheck, the situations they've got going on personally, the issues and adversity they're dealing with personally, and put the eyes on the client. Because now when they look at this client might not be coming home tomorrow, this person is going to wake up without a spouse, and I'm called, it's my role, it's my job, it's my duty to go out there and serve this person with the service I have to provide with what they've asked for. It changes everything, right? And so a couple things now I want to kind of unpack as I looked around the room, right? There was 3 different categories I believe that every agent, every producer kind of fit in. And the reality is, as I built this business and as I went out there and produced, I was in one, I was in all 3 of these different categories many different times. So you might have one arm in one category and a leg in the other category, right? But the first thing I saw was there was 3 different agents as far as how they saw themselves. One agent, they had their identity right. They realized that the client set the foreman, that they were the doctor, the professional. And so when the client said something like, well, I got it taken care of. It's all good, right? One agent, they gave in easy. Like the client could give them any kind of pushback. Man, they were giving in easy. So they're like, okay, no big deal. No big deal. And they would just, hang up the phone. Okay, I'll update the system, Mrs. Smith. I heard that a lot of times. Okay, I'll update the system. Like what? That was one of them, which means that they thought that they were kind of trying to make a sale. They didn't see themselves as providing something of such value, and they were so valuable for that client. They're easy to get off the phone, right? That was one. The other one was this approach of like, if the resistance is not too bad, I'll keep going. Like they say, well, we already got, the protection in place. Okay, perfect. Well, most families do. And most clients that send the request and they send multiple forms, and it's because they want to get the best price for their family and option, which obviously makes sense. And probably fair to say it's what you guys did as well. And I've been assigned to get that information that we've not yet got to you as a manager. Let me go ahead and put down some notes to best accommodate you. When are you back home from work? Now, the moment that person said it all good, but the moment that person said, no, I'm all good, a little resistance, then they folded up shop. Okay, great. Okay, well, I'll update the system, Mrs. Smith, or whatever, and they'd hang up. But there was the other agents, the ones that had the most appointments booked, the ones that are Hall of Fame producers, the best producers. Their response was, they said, we already got to take it. No, I understand, 100%. Listen, Ms. Smith, this is for your benefit, not mine. I could care less what you do or don't do with this information, but it's probably fair to assume that if you could find out that what you have in place isn't exactly the best bet out there for you and you could get better benefits and lower costs, you'd probably want to know now, not later. And if what you have is the best, you'd probably want validation that it is, so you rest assured that, for the next 10, 15 years, you're in the best plan possible. My job is just to get the information out as a field underwriter, not a sales rep. What you do with it's up to you, but we definitely have to get this out of the system to market offer list, and it's really for your benefit, not mine. So as far as the schedule goes, I don't have a lot of time. I could probably squeeze you between appointments at 6 or at 8 tomorrow, which is better. Perfect. So the reality is I heard that exact phone call tons of different times. And the difference between the person that ended up with 20 appointments and the person that ended up with 9, when it came to the same activity, because some of the agents, it wasn't an activity thing as far as when you look at how many dials were made and the appointments booked and how they correlated, but it was an attitude thing. They didn't really think of themselves in such a way that put them at a high enough value to stay in it and realize like they're not getting off the phone with me saying, I'll update the system, Mr. Smith. The only way they're getting off the phone is if they hang up on me because they desperately need this. I know the value I provide, and I'm going to stay in here until I get hung up on. And in fact, when I was dialing, I got hung up a ton of times, but I didn't hang up on them. They hung up on me. They decided when the call was over by hanging up. I didn't decide, okay, I've gone enough. The call's over. Mrs. Smith, I'll update the system. So that was a big difference I saw. All right, the other difference that I noted was you could tell. All right, so some of the agents, they actually had like on their phone like a picture of their wife, like the kids or their family. And again, I'm intentionally doing this because I want to be able to observe and then bring it to you. But you know, some of them have clarity of why they're doing what they're doing. Like the reasons are right in front of them, right? They got them on their iPad when they're dialing. The family, you know, what's got them, you know, and if you ask them, like, what's your reasons or why, they know them. It's like, dude, I want to be able to save up enough to get my first recruiter. I also want to be able to get a house in this location. I want to be able to drive this car. I want to be able to put my kids in this kind of school. I want to be able to give back to this specific charity. I want to be able to serve the church in this way by tithing this amount. It was specific, right? I want to be able to help out my mom, whatever it is. That was one. The ones that were the best, they understood, and they actually had them in front of them. Not every one of them, but the top, some of them, they had it right in front of them, which made me think that like they don't just know it, why they're doing what they're doing. They don't just have a couple reasons, man. They got a loaded bag full of reasons, man, that really have them anchored to doing the right activities. They have them anchored to stay in and continue to push back when the clients get them pushed back because they care, because they know that, hey, the extra mile, that's where all the success goes. It's what I give after I've given my all that matters the most. And they've got that heavy bag of reasons. It's almost like that anchor. It's so heavy. It's anchoring them to doing what they need to do and thinking the way they need to think. So I noted that. The other, though, you know, they've got the others. It's like you can tell if they had like a big week last week, because then it was like this week doesn't have to be that big. Meaning that when things go better than they expected, then it's easy to kind of coast. It's easy to kind of just like, not that big of a deal. Maybe I'll take more of an exaggerated lunch. Maybe I'll be more distracted. Maybe I'm just going to make dials here and there. But it wasn't this all-out focus, this blitz to get the appointments booked, right? Where the other person with the clear reasons on why, it was almost like they knew what they were doing, and they wanted to get the job done so they can move on to the next thing, right? Like for myself, it was like once I hit, 15 appointments booked in this dial day, I've now earned the right to go recruit. And recruiting is going to allow me to eventually get out of these dial days because I'm going to have a passive income derived from the business I built through recruiting. And so it was just being able to put and pre-decide like, okay, once I hit this, then I'm going to move to this. And this, let me remind myself of what this means. And while it's worth it to not just procrastinate and be 80% in, but be all in, right? The other person, it was like no clarity, right? It was kind of like social hour. And be clear, I shut it down, but like, it was like social hour, like just, hey, how's it all going? Just laissez-faire, no big deal, right? Almost like they had no reasons, no why. Like, hey, if I could just make a sale or two and just survive, if my nose is like a nose hair above water, man, I ain't drowning, baby. I'm still alive. Like that was kind of the difference. So those are kind of the three different, people, the groups that I saw fit in. The other was like, and this is what I realized is there's comparing. It's hard not to compare, but what I realized is what are you comparing to? So one group, they compare to like the other low performers, right? So if you're doing the leaderboard and you're marking how many appointments are booked, Bob books, 2 appointments, and now he's not dead last. He's got Billy beat, and he's like, yeah, I got you. And it's like, dude, you're comparing yourself to somebody that's actually not working at all. Like, I think he's watching Netflix over there. Like, what are you doing? Right. So the comparing is more to like those that are below where they're at, like the bottom of the bottom. Right. The other compare to peers, right? Like they're battling their, the peers, like, how they see themselves currently and who's competitive around that. So if I'm the person that typically comes in like 4th or 5th on a dial day as far as appointments being booked or what have you, then that's what I'm going to compare myself to. But the others were comparing themselves to their potential, right? Like, am I getting better? Am I progressing from the prior week? Right? They were just intentional and nonstop. You say, Paul, how do you know that? Well, as I'm sitting there, I'm watching, there's some agents that they've got 2 phones they're dialing with, right? So they have 2 phones and it's nonstop. And I'm like, dude, you've always dialed with 2 phones. He's like, well, no, I had one, but I was using a phone burner, but now I'm going to use, no, he said Ringy. I'm going to use Ringy with this phone. And then with my other phone, I'm going to call the other leads because that's going to put me in a position where I can get more families called. Like progression, like getting better, being all in, comparing yourself to your potential, not to the peers or people below you. The other thing I saw was where the ownership of results, the ownership of outcome. So one group, it's like it's the lead's fault, right? Or what did one guy say? He said it's difficult to go out there and hit the goals I've got. Because I said, where are you at tracking with your goals, man? Like, are you on pace? We're now in February. Like, where do you stand with that? He's like, man, it's difficult to hit your goals when you only book 2 appointments on a dial day. And what I realized is that he told him, like, he had a couple bad dial days. And once he had that, he told himself, like, that's the normal expectation. So his expectation originally, I'm like, well, what did you expect originally? He's like, well, dude, originally I expected to book 15 appointments. Now, be clear, he didn't have enough leads as we unpacked, like, how we got started and all that. Like, it was for different reasons like that. But once he had an experience a couple times, instead of, figuring out how to change the experience, how to get better, how to grow, how to get uncomfortable, take responsibility and move up, the response was, oh, this is just what I get. So let me lower my expectation to what I'm experiencing because, dude, at least it feels better. At least I can kind of go through the dial days not feeling like I got to get uncomfortable out of sorts and do something about it. Like, at least that's, and so what I realized is, man, a lot of and this to me is the biggest reason why somebody doesn't go out there and hit a new level with booking appointments and success as a producer. Is they start buying a lie about the leads. They start thinking like it's the people's fault. Now, be clear. I remember for a period of time as I got started in the business working nothing but mortgage protection leads, that if the client was over 75, I'm not selling that. Like, they're not going to want to, pay $800 a month or whatever because their mortgage is $500,000. Like, I'm not going to close that because I convinced myself of that. You want to know what I closed on those? 0%. Didn't help anybody. But the moment I sat back and thought, man, that's a lie. Now, I'm believing that lie, and I've rehearsed that lie so much that it's almost like, I believe it's true. And it's affecting me as if it is true. I mean, I'm going out there and I'm finding evidence to support the verdict I've already come to, which is these leads or this type of lead, this older client is just not going to buy. And the funny thing is now, if you ask me, Paul, if you could pick any lead that's out there, you can get as many as one lead type. What would that lead type be? To me now, it would be the very lead that I convinced myself was the worst one. I mean, I'd tell you, give me all the clients from 70 to 85 mortgage protection, because I could go out there and sell them equity protection, paint the picture. I could build myself in such a way that I'm there for them. I could use before it was the whole mortgage was so much, and they say, man, I don't want to pay that much, or I don't only want 20,000. Now I'd either get it's too much, or I don't want just 20,000. I want the whole mortgage. But I was able to use all that to really show them that, hey, most clients in your situation at your age, man, you're not 35. You don't have 5 kids like me. You don't need a big plan. I mean, really every client I sit with in your situation, man, they're like, Paul, I'm on a fixed income. And so I just want to make sure that it's affordable forever. If it's affordable now, it'll be affordable forever. I know exactly what I spend, what's going in and out. And Bob, what most clients do is they look for a plan that's going to bridge a gap, protect the equity in the house, give your spouse the time to mourn, to grieve, to recover, to move forward, and figure out what the next best move is. And that's what about every client I sit with is looking for in your situation, is to protect that 100,000 in equity, so that way it doesn't become a hardship or your spouse doesn't lose it because they can't qualify to refinance that your income's gone. So that's what they're all looking for, just a plan that's affordable to bridge the gap. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? And all of a sudden, that allowed me, by doing that and then that setup, by talking about how 20,000 is important. Before it was a curse. Like, oh, we just don't want 20. Well, I was able to flip that and use that as something that really kind of showed who I know I was, which is I'm not a salesperson just trying to make a sell. I'm the doctor to the patient. I'm the person that's not after their wallet. I'm after their peace of mind, to protect that, to serve them, to help them. And so it changed everything. So what was against me, I ended up using it for me. So what I realized is that a lot of these producers, they've told themselves these lies, right? and see what I would encourage everybody to do is say, hey, what have you told yourself that's limiting you? So one thing that I asked myself was, does this thought line up with success, my desired outcome, or does this thought line up with failure? And if it lines up with failure, the question is, how must I see this to get it from failure to success? Right? It'd be like me before I drive up to, mobile home parks during appointments. And I'm thinking, like, they ain't got no money. They're probably gonna, I remember knocking on doors and, the lady's mustache was thicker than mine. You know what I mean? And then the dude shows up. I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm, ping my location to my wife, like, babe, they're gonna take my kidney. Hopefully they don't take both. And I would tell myself, like, oh, they don't have any money. And the reality is, they wouldn't, because I would communicate in such a way that showed such little value that they would always be like, I can't afford it. And I would justify, like, okay, got it. But the moment I put it a different way to myself and said, man, this family, if it's tight, dude, they can't afford not to have this. The last thing they need is they lose somebody. It's already tight. Now they're trying to figure out how to bury their loved one. Like, I got to make sure I communicate in such a way where they understand that this has to be put in first, and then things have to move and fit around it, because this is essential. This is unmovable. This is something they have to have. The moment I told myself that story, all of a sudden that became, my ability to serve families in different mobile home parks and stuff, it went up significantly. So just the way you put it. So I realized that the top producers, right, they don't justify, they take ownership. They don't think it's a lead. They say it's on me, right? And I always ask myself, like, man, if Steve G sat down with them, he'd have closed them. If he called him, he'd have booked him. So what do I think he would have said? How do I think he would approach it? How do I think he would have handled it? And I used to do that all the time, man. If it was a top producer, I'd always think, like, how do they deal with it, right? Next thing is this, consumption. So like at lunch, right? The ones that just below average, dude, they'd just hang out, go on their phone. In fact, they'd be distracted throughout the entire day, kind of checking their phone. Lunch, it was almost like prolonged hanging out, wanting just to kind of do nothing, didn't see the phone on their ear. The most productive ones, I booked the most appointments, man, at lunch, they were eating pizza and watching a podcast and eating quickly so they could get back on the phones. They were consuming good stuff that would help reset their mind so they could go out there and elevate to the next level when it came to the next block of hours that were set aside specifically to dial. Where the other ones were just like consuming just nonsense, right? It was just non-intentional. They were kind of moved by what they felt like doing. In fact, that would be another thing. I think the underperformers were just what they felt like doing. Well, I wonder what the weather's like. Is it going to snow this weekend? I wonder. I wonder what's on. I wonder when's the next the Yellowstone? When's that coming out? And I mean, I don't know what they were actually looking at. It's just what I'm coming up with in my mind. But they're on their phones, like Googling stuff. Look, I mean, I'm looking. They can see me. I can see them, right? And so, but the top producers, man, it was just nonstop, all in, seizing the moment, making it matter, being all in, being focused, right? And see, they weren't moved by feelings. They were moved by pre-deciding, when I go into dial day, this is what it's going to look like. And those were kind of the three groups. One were being moved by feelings. The others were moved by like what was urgent. I got to check emails. I need to call back. Oh, Brian called me. Who's Brian? I don't know who Brian is. Brian called me. I got to call Brian back, see what he's doing. It was just moved by things that seemed urgent but weren't that important. But the top producers, they had pre-decided, like, man, when I go in, I'm going to be focused. I'm going to have everything planned out. I'm going to make sure that I get the job done. If I'm having enough people not picking up, and I'm going to go buy more leads. They've already pre-decided what it looks like, man. Just like in the field, if I get a no-show, I'm gonna pull over. I'm gonna dial and book those appointments in, right? Or, man, if my 7:30 or 8:30 appointment doesn't show up, I'm gonna pull over and I'm gonna dial and fill in some, double book or fill in the gaps for the next day. So that way I can make sure that I've stacked the deck, because, man, I just, one of my non-negotiables is I have to be out in the field until 9:00 at night, right? They have they've pre-decided what their response is throughout the day. So they're more in line based off how they've seen it. They've pre-decided. They've thought about it. It's forecasted. There's forethought. So when that event shows up, they're more likely to make the right choice. The hard right opposed to the easy wrong. The easy wrong is what I feel like doing. I feel like doing this. I feel like doing that, right? Next thing is this. They had this mindset that was, so there was three different mindsets. One was closed minded, right? Like they didn't even want advice. They don't want to hear it. They don't reach out. They're just closed minded. Like it's just waited. I don't want to open my mind up because then I might have to take responsibility, accountability. Closed minded. The other one we're open minded until like success happens, right? I'm open minded until I have a successful week, a successful month. And then I'm closed minded and I'll just repeat that same month over and over again, have no real progress or growth because, it is what it is. The others were open minded, coachable, wanting feedback. What do you think? What can I tweak? What can I adjust? And they're open minded to feedback of those that have gone the way forward that could say, hey, man, put your feet here. Let me illuminate the path. Let me throw some spotlights on it so you know more likely where to step, right? Because you feel like you're kind of walking in a dark place. Why am I getting this result? Why am I getting this outcome? Let me turn the lights on for you, bro. Let me help you out here. They were more open-minded. They were more coachable. The other thing is this. There was two people. One that, man, you could just tell that their emotions were based off of the result, not the activity. Like one of the guys, man, he didn't care what the result was, man. He's fired up because his activity was high. Man, he was just in it. You could tell he was all in. He was focused, which builds this good feeling about yourself, knowing that, hey, man, I'm not distracted. I'm focused. I'm in the zone. And it didn't matter if there was an hour that went by with no appointments booked or what have you. He was all in, getting after it, which was a big deal, right? And then the other person was like more staring at the fruit. What the results? The results weren't going that good, man. It's just negative. And so the appointments that they would book, they wouldn't book. They would have booked, they don't book because of the way they are emotionally, right? They're so emotionally high that they're not grounded, so they don't handle the objection with the right transition, with the right speed, with the right tonality, and they mess it all up, right? And so they don't focus on the root. They're focused on the fruit. And so I saw that was a big deal too, as far as the process. Like they were focused, and I think this is such a big point as well. It's like, I remember my daughter walked into my room the other night and it was like, 12 o'clock at night. And we tell them like kids can't have candy after midnight, or not after midnight. I'm sorry. That'd be terrible parenting. All right. They can't have candy when they go to bed. This is midnight. My daughter Parker walks in. And she's got a lollipop in her hair, and she's freaking out. She's swinging her head back and forth. Every time she swings her head back and forth, the lollipop pops smacking her in the face because it's stuck in her hair, right? And I think it's hilarious. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, stop moving her head. She's like, she's crying because she's hitting herself. My wife, she thinks that like, she's like, oh my God, like there's a lollipop in her hair. And the way my wife responded was as if like she was visualizing my daughter being bald, like, oh my God, we have to shave her head, To me, I'm thinking it's funny because like the process is the same. Like you're going to stick her in the shower, rinse her hair out, put soap in it, the lollipop comes out. And I realized that, a lot of agents, what they'll do is they get like a lollipop stuck in their head. They get a no-show, a chargeback, a no-sell. And they're so focused on that which is easily to remove, they let that hit themselves in the face and beat themselves up, opposed to just focusing on the activity. And see, what I realized is top producers, man, they don't get stuck on what's stuck on their head or a short term of outcomes. Man, they realize that, hey, the process will prevail. That if I got that stuck, well, good, right? That means maybe I'll wash a little harder this time. Maybe I'm going to book a little bit more appointments. Maybe I'll be more intentional. Maybe I'll make some adjustments. Like they level up and realize that the activity is going to solve it. Activity solves most all problems, right? And so the process, I believe, was an important thing as I watched is the ones that were the best, man, they didn't get too high to get too low. They were just focused on the activity. All right. Last thing is this. What I saw on the phones were a couple main points throughout it. One was the agents that did the best when they communicated on the phones. It was about the client. It wasn't about them. And they would go back to the client's why. Like Mary, most clients that send this request back in, it's typically for the same reason. They want to make sure that when they die, that there's no financial burden or hardship for their family, that is taken care of, and they have that peace of mind. Is that pretty much describe what you had in mind as well? They would say little things like that to get the client to be real, to focus back on the fact that this is for you, not for me. This serves you, not me. This is for your benefit, not mine, which was a big deal. Also, they would do little takeaways, right? So it would be something like, well, listen, I don't actually have a tomorrow, but I'll have more time, on Friday or whatever. Or, I don't have a 5 o'clock, but I can squeeze you between appointments at 6 o'clock. So there was just a little bit of takeaways. Or, client would say, well, can you just give me the price or whatever whatever objection they hit him with, and they could go back and they'd say stuff like, that's a great question. Now, just to see if we could even get you qualified before we get ahead of ourselves, have you had cancer, heart attack, or stroke? And they would use little things as a takeaway. The other thing is they use, the whole herd concept. They say things like, listen, Bob, right now we're really overwhelmed and inundated with the amount of requests. And so I'm going to do my best as a manager to get this information out to you and get you put into the schedule. But I'm not sure that I can. But let me get your schedule and see how I can accommodate. They're basically in essence saying, man, there's a lot of people. Everybody wants this. I'm going to do my best to get it. So it's kind of like a takeaway, and also including in the herd that you want to do what the herd's doing. Everybody wants to protect their family, right? And so they used quite a bit of that herd concept throughout the entire thing. Every client that sends back the request, they're typically looking to make sure they're protected. So they would use things like that. Most clients in your situation, everybody in your situation, we're really behind. I'm going to do my best to help you out. I'll have 16, 17 appointments tomorrow, Bob. So the only thing I really do ask and expect is that you give me a window between 6 and 7 because of that. Is that fair enough? Yeah. The whole herd concept. Okay, perfect. Bob, based on my schedule, again, because we are behind, we have a lot of families to see tomorrow. The only thing I really do ask and expect is that you definitely make sure to be there for me tomorrow. Is that fair enough? Yes, it is. Great. And now you're using that rule of reciprocation when people want to, or consistency, the rule of consistency. They want to be consistent with what they said they're going to do. So I got them to vocalize, yes, I will be there. They're more likely to be there, right? Urgency as well was a big deal. They've only got me dispatched out to the next couple of days, kind of helping out. Now, this still translates. You say, Paul, I'm doing telesales. It translates the same thing, right? Hey, right now is not a good time. Okay, perfect. Well, listen, Bob, right now we're really inundated with the amount of requests we have. And because these are all done over the phone now, I'm on the phone, from 7 a.m. to 9 o'clock at night. My suggestion, because I know it's important to you, is I've got you now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back on to help you out. I'll have about 10 minutes to go through this with you real quick. The main thing is urgency, right? No different than, saying, all right, perfect, Bob. Can you call me back later? I'm running out of the door. Great. I'm actually leaving the office myself right now. The purpose of my call was just to set up a time to get back to you because I don't have any time now. What time are you typically, in the door from work? After 5, after 6? 6. Okay, great. I don't have a 6 takeaway, but I can put you between appointments, it looks like at 7. Any reason to believe that you wouldn't be home at 7 o'clock? Right. So they use urgency to build it up. And then also the last thing would be they didn't use any risk, or they took away the risk. When value is high and risk is low, people move forward, right? Especially if they're already raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in this service and what you have to offer. The no risk is saying like, listen, Bob, whatever you do with the information, man, it makes no difference to me. My job is just to get it out to you because you requested. I know this is probably important for you. But whatever you do with it's up to you, right? That's the whole no risk thing. And so there was a couple times where I was on the phone and I booked appointments where others hadn't, and it was just because of that. They're like, I'm not interested, and they keep it, and the other person gives up early. But I would just say, listen, man, I understand, I'm not interested either. But the reality is this, I'm not a sales rep, I just filled underwrite. So to me, what you do with the information makes no difference. I could care less. My job is just to get it out to you. What you do with it, it's up to you. But we got to get this out of the system and get it to you. And if you could find a plan that makes sense down the road, or maybe, in a couple weeks, I'm sure you'd want to know about it, right? And if so, great. If not, no big deal. But listen, I'll be dispatched out there all day tomorrow. I don't have a lot of time. I get you between appointments at 7 or at 8, and they would book it, right? Or I'd book it. So guys, just a couple things I wanted to kind of highlight. Those are the 3 different categories for the most part what I saw people fit in. And the reality is this: you're closer than you think you are to going out there and taking it to the next level and being a top producer. The difference between where you're at and where you want to go, it's just a small couple adjustments. And successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. Most of these people would have been in one or the other category temporarily or for a short period of time, but they lived consistently in a different one of those categories. If you want to take it to the next level, choose one habit. Maybe it's pre-deciding, like, man, I'm going to pre-decide this week what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it. It's going to be structured. It's going to be planned. If that takes place, then I'm going to move to this. If I have, a bunch of people not picking up, then I'm going to, get 2 phones. I'm going to get on ring, whatever it is. Pre-decide what it looks like. Pre-decide what time you're going to get to the office, what time you're going to leave the office. plan it all out. Maybe that's one habit. But as you go through this, think about what's the one thing, if you do it and you do it, this week, it's going to take it to the next level. The purpose of this, guys, is to help you get better. To hear, not to do, is really building a business without a foundation. The moment things happen, it's going to fall. You want to be hearers, but also doers. So guys, as we go out this week, put some of these things into practice. Think about your dial days and your production, and see how you can take it to the next level. I know I enjoyed sitting with a lot of the producers and dial alongside them. And to me, it was a blast. It was like a game. It was competitive. It was every time I called a client, it was like, how can I get the appointment? This is for them. How can I communicate in a way that's going to lead to that desired outcome? It was a blast. So guys, I know sometimes you could think, man, it's dial day. Find a way to manipulate yourself in such a way where you go out there and you enjoy it and you get the most from it. So guys, I hope this helps. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share this. Maybe there's somebody out there that if they hear this podcast today, they'll be able to tweak, adjust, make some modifications on the phone and the way they run their dial day, and it'll take it to the next level. So guys, make it a massive week. Be strong, stay steadfast, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
What's going on, everybody? You know what time it is. It's time to give away $250 in leads to 4 lucky people. If you commented on last week's video featuring Rami Hamadi, you're automatically entered to win. So leave a comment right down below so you're entered to win next week. Without further ado, let's see who our first winner for this week is. Winner number 1 is Christina Maggio. Let's go, Rami. Our second winner is... oh, gosh. Our second winner is... Andrew. Amazing. Blessed to be part of this community. Our third winner is... David H. Biggest takeaways: practice what you preach and become obsessed. Great pod as always. Thank you. And our fourth and final winner is... A Wrestling. You are never going to get where you want by default. It's got to be by intention. Great wisdom. Thank you. Guys, it's that simple. Just leave a comment right down below and you could win some free leads, which is amazing. It's a great thing that you need for your business. Leave a comment down below on this video and every video, and we'll see you next Monday. Take care.